How's it going? I want to check on the sound and the video, make sure everything is you can see everything. Hi, Jaron and Dominic. How you guys doing? Hi, Kirk, Eugene, Nansman. Hi, Nansman. Eric, good to see you. Hi, Rel, neighbor. I think. Hi, Graham, Mark, Planet Earth. Okay. Today what I wanted to do. Hi, Ari. Paul. What I want to do this morning is, to a great extent, is primarily for those of you. Hi, Bobo. For those of you who are either in or interested in the Lyrique Etude Number Two project. Um, Basically, I want to do a couple things. Really, I wanted to sort of give you an idea of the flow of things and how things worked. But I think more importantly, I wanted to answer any questions you might have. So as I go along, you can just type in any questions you have, and I'll try to answer them. And I think probably, and for those of you who are members of Lyrique, you can add anything you like that you feel is helpful. Hey, Brian, Vincent, Sergio, Russell. My goodness, we've got a big bunch. Hi, Jim, James. Hello from Italy. Buongiorno. Okay, Thomas, Mike, Lee. Hey, Lee, how's it going? Where are you going to accept my when are you going to accept my money? Okay, let's talk about that. We're talking about transferring money. Um, we have three people, uh, and we have three different areas that we've divided the world up into. And for the United States, Kirk Benson, Kirk is here now. For Europe is Paul Wheatley, and for Asia, Australia, and Canada is Benny Hugh. So what we'll do is that when we get started, there are two big bills that we're going to have to get started with. One is for the getting for the producer to get started on the cases. It takes, I was told the other day, it takes between, I think, 4 to 5 months to get the sapphire, because there's sapphire glass on top and sapphire glass on the bottom, and so the they need 30% of the total amount up front, and that's what we're going to. That's going to be one of the bills we're going to be paying. The other one is for the movement, because there's all kinds of things they've got to order for the movement, and so we're going to be paying that. I hope we can get started. Uh, uh, the different transfer coordinators will be sending you basically what amounts to a transfer advice. In other words, saying, okay, here's how much um, that the transfer is going to be, and there'll be details. This is all done with bank transfers. We don't use PayPal. We don't use credit cards. We certainly don't use cash. And so it's all bank transfers. If you've never done a bank transfer before, all you got to do is just go down to your bank and you can do it well, and they'll do it for you. Uh, it's a lot easier though, just to do it from home. You can your online banking app should be able to do it. And the transfer coordinators can help if you got some questions and stuff. Right now, we have been trying to set up a LaRique account in Switzerland. And what we did, we thought, well, for whatever reason, we weren't able to do it by now. One of the things they wanted was a $20,000 bank account to so that we could have a Swiss company, and so we have to have that much on hand. And I think time we got finished paying off for everything else, we just wasn't quite there for that. So that didn't get done, and so I know some guys are working on it now. Some of the LaRique guys are working on that, but for now, so last time what we did, we used my company. It's called Sandlight Productions, and we use my corporate account for that. And so what we tried to do, we got a Swiss financial representative. And so he and I worked together, and again, we did we didn't have even in the United States or somewhere else, we didn't have a LaRique LLC. So again, we ended up using mine. Well, what happened, apparently a lot of interesting things are happening with the Swiss banking system, not to mention the American banking system. So we were waiting for it. And now the reason for that is the reason we wanted to set it up so we could get the VAT back. That may not have been necessary, but that's another story. Okay. So what we're doing this time, we had divided it up. We wanted to have three equal payments, each one of them to be 3,000 Swiss francs, because all of the billing and everything else we get is in Swiss francs. And the Swiss franc has been going up and down versus every other currency. So, to make a long story short, to get started anyway, until we can get our Swiss account set up, we're going to use the Sandlight account again. The Sandlight, right now there's roughly $3,300 per 3,000 Swiss francs. So the first thing we'll be doing is simply transferring $3,300 to the Sandlight account. I'll pay the bills that we have. One of the things that I like to do, in fact, I think it's important to do, is whenever we pay a bill, I send two things. One, the bill or the invoice, send a copy of that. And we're going to have our own Facebook page for Etude number 2. We have one now for our first watch, but now we're going to need another one just for those people who are involved in the second watch. Okay. And that way we can have a little saner conversation. A lot of times people come in. We get a lot of people, for example, on Pure Horology who have all of this. They're trying to sell me one thing or the other, sell us one thing or the other. Says, "Oh, here, buy these or buy that." So we really need a place where we can sort of talk about our project without being interrupted by people who are not invested in it. To be blunt about it. So anyway, so we'll have and there what you'll have every time we get an invoice that will be shown, and then also you get the when we pay it, we get an announcement saying, okay, you're this so much was transferred, and this is how we know what we're doing. Okay, so that's how the transfers are now. uh, how they're going to be spread out, we could be, it could be until December that we get all of the watches. What we did last time, we had the three groups, and we started with Asia, Canada, and Australia. We sent those first. Then the second group was the United States, and the third group was Europe. Well, the Europeans didn't get theirs until last month almost. So what we're doing this time is that when we ship them, we're going to be the Europeans are going to be first, the United States is going to be second again, and then the Asia, Australia, and Canada will be third. Anyway, so that's in terms of, I guess, more than you ask about when we're going to have it. So the question is that I'm hoping that we can, as soon as next week, uh, we'll be able to have you'll be getting a basically a bill, or from the coordinator. Yeah, Kirk, you're right about the safety margin. That's the other thing too. Th- uh, the amount, there are all kinds of things that are they're there, and they're hard to, in this Kirk is exactly right, the safety margin. For example, somebody's got a bank in wherever, okay, let's say they're sending money from a bank in Mexico. And so the Mexican bank charges, let's say, $20 for the transfer. Well, and so instead of getting $3,300, you get $3,280. Now you're gonna say, well, that's not much. That's $20. So what? You multiply that by 100, and you'll see how much it is. Uh, and so last time we had $1,600 in transfer fees before we realized that, good grief, this is, we better. Well, unfortunately, what happened, my bank, seeing all of this money going through, said, "Hey, these guys we're gonna we're gonna up your status." So at least coming into the Sandlight account, there's no charge, and also sending it out. So what I'll do when I send it to Switzerland to make a payment, there's no transfer fee from my bank. Every now and then I run into something, what I'll call a little more interesting. Things aren't working right. And then I'll just go down to my bank and I'll say, look, guys, what's going on? And they'll fix it for me. So I've got great relations with my bank, but for the most part, all I do is send it out. Now, do I like this? No, I do not. I don't like to deal with other people's money. I really don't. And that's one of the reasons I had asked for some help from Kirk and Paul and Benny. And so this way, we're sort of all doing, so everybody can see what's going on. And I think that's very important because, you know, another thing related to that, it's all of our money. I mean, including mine. I don't get a break because I'm doing the coordination, and Kirk and Benny and Paul, none of us taking a financial cut on this thing. In fact, the opposite can be true. Now, I mentioned some funny little things that come up. Let me give you one example, and we sort of tried to budget for that, and this is another reason why uh, we had the higher number. The Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève. Well, that is $700 to enter it, or 600, something like that, Swiss francs. And we entered it last time, and it was fun. We learned a lot. I'll put it that way. Uh, and we're going to do that again this year, except we're going to go into a different category, and we're going to go into it with a different amount, retail amount. And so if we get to the nomination stage, then they'll say, well, it's going to cost you never 6,000 or 7,000 Swiss francs because we're going to take your your watch around the world on this tour. Well, that's a big deal, and so I mean, since we didn't get a chance to do that last time, if we do it, so that's another little thing. Now, when you divvy that up by 102, because we're really dividing it by 102, there's that. Okay, Martin, if more than 100 people want watches, couldn't we expand the group a bit? Man, Martin, we you have no idea how many more we have. Um, I was when we first announced this, when the Larique group got together and said, okay, how many guys want to watch? Um, Not everybody wanted one. Say, well, I got this one, and this one is, this is fine with me. And so there weren't that many. There were enough. I think about maybe a third, a half of the original group said, yeah, I'd like one. And so I thought, oh man, because we already told the producers we're going to have 102. Talk about that in 1 second. And so by morning yesterday, I already had filled up all of the spots we had, and now we have a big standby list. So uh, we got way more, and I mean way more, and I'm still getting them. I got up this morning, and there was another group of people who wanted. And I wish we could accommodate everybody. Believe me, what I did, I put everything on standby. Now, Martin, it was, I mean, it's going to be pretty rough handling 100 people. Last time we were dealing with 51. And then the producers, the people who made the watch, and the people who saw them making a watch, they said, we want one too. And so we ended up with 70 watches. We started with let's see, 51. Well, we started with 50, but it became 51 because we were counting two people as one because they were boyfriend and girlfriend. Anyway, all right. So that I think on a financial thing, I think um I think pretty much the what we had in the video. By the way, too, if you didn't see the video yesterday, look at it. Planet Earth, that gives you a total breakdown of how much we paid for the watch, because this is not a for profit. Okay, we're trying to make it not a for loss. Right? We what here's essentially what we're doing, and if you don't know this, now this was in the video. There was a long video that we had that came out yesterday on Watch Art Side. Basically, we're getting a watch at the production price or close to it anyway. We're paying for some other things that if we were actually producing everything ourselves, we would pay for in a different way. But that's another story. Uh, Essentially, and again, this is for people who don't know this. I had my own publishing company, and one of the things that I learned is that the retail price was about 10 times the production price. So if you produced a book and you spent a buck on printing and all of the other stuff that goes in, paying the author and so forth, you had to bill it at 10 times that. So if the book cost $1 to produce, you'd sell it for $10. And I found out talking to some watch people, very close in watch production. And so when you look at the price of these, really top watchmakers with limited numbers of production, that's why the prices are so high. A lot of people say, "Oh, they're just greedy." It's not the case. It's not a matter of being greedy. It's a matter of staying in business because there are all kinds of things that they've got to do. They have advertising costs, marketing costs. They have to give the ads and dealers a huge discount, and so when you buy a watch, you're paying for all of that. I see these things. They had, I forgot what the watch company was, but they hired all of these, I think, four really famous actors, and they were the squad for their watch. Like what do they know about watches? But that's another story. But we pay for that. I mean, when you buy a watch, you're paying for those guys, whatever they pay these actors to say nice things about their watch. We don't. The only thing we're paying for is the watch, period. We're not paying for another dime than that. So that's why we can get a really superior watch for somewhere between, worst case scenario, we get them at maybe a third of the price. It could also be a tenth. So that's on the price thing. And believe me, I went into great detail on that video. So don't, if you, for more details on that, please take a look at it. That anyway, okay. Let me take a look at some of the questions. I know it has a guilloche dial, but what does a watch look like? Color, Roman numerals, Arabic numerals, etc. Okay, Eugene, this is where we will have a discussion with our designer. Okay. Um, we want to find sort of something we want. Something for us. We're the customers, so to speak. We're sort of the customers and the producers at the same time. And so what we decided, now, something I had said in the video that's probably wrong. I say a lot of wrong things, so you got to keep an eye on me. And that was that we were given three types of options for the guilloche. The most expensive was a hand turned engine, rose engine, and anything draws out the guilloche. And that was $3,000 to $3,500 per watch. The second option, I thought they simply hooked up a computer to the Rose engine, and the thing cranked it out. Now that cost $1,000. They don't do it that way. They do it another way that has the same effect and the same look that you get with a Rose engine, except instead of costing 3,000 to 3,500 Swiss francs, actually not dollars, per watch, it costs 1,000. And so we're getting a really good one. Now, the third option was stamped, and that's just, they have a pattern and bap, they stamp it. That was 65 Swiss francs. And what we decided, this is the Larique group we had decided. So we said, well, let's get a good one. So let's sort of go in between. We'll take the second route, but we haven't decided on the pattern or anything else. We also decided too that we want to have a unique pattern. So the Larique pattern we get from Comblebine. Hang on, I always say it wrong. I say a lot of stuff wrong, so bear with me. Comble Mine. Comble Mine is the name of the company that makes the dials and the guilloche, and in this case, the hands. Sometimes, last time, Metalem, who did our dial, didn't do hands. So that was some of the things we learned. But Comble Mine does. Now, what they have, they've got a really nice library of different patterns and styles and so forth. But we have and one option was that we could have our own. And so what we'll do is that we'll have our designer design one for us. And so what he'll do is he'll give us a bunch that we can look at, and we can talk about color, and we can talk about those kinds of things. And and then that way we'll come to a decision. Now, the thing about the way decisions are made with our group, it's not democratic, and by being not democratic, I don't mean it in that somebody says, "Okay, this is going to be so. Shut up and sit down." That's not the kind of non-democratic I'm talking about. Rather, we try to arrive at a consensus, and it goes more like this. If we have a decision, we say 51% love it, 49% absolutely hate it. What's the point? I mean, that's not coming with something that is, sensible. You don't want to have half the people really not like something. And so this is how we work toward a consensus. And usually what we do, the name of the designer is Matu. And we say, hey, Matu, what should we do? What do you think? And he'll come up with some options and we'll talk about them and we'll finally come up with something. I mean, it's messy, but that's one of the things that we have to deal with, that we sign up for. Yeah, Patel Philippe. Um, yeah, that I think what Kirk just said is the correct answer. They have it's a form of muscular dystrophy um, that they started having this. People would make one watch, and this is a unique watch. I mean, a one of a kind, literally. And the way that we're doing it is that we're going to see if we can twist some arms and get a little help from the guys who are going to make the difference. We're going to have this watch, and we're going to have a different dial on it. And Martin Bacon is our guy who's working on that. And we have another guy who is going to be one of the new participants, and he's a designer at a university in Sydney, Australia, and he's uh, probably going to he and Martin will work on that, and of course with they'll be working with Matthew too to come up with something different, unique, and the only watch. Also, too, Wooten Lannon and Caton are going to be doing the case, and on the back of the watch, instead of having the numbers, we have 100 of them. So I mean, they'll be numbered from 1 to 100. The GPHG watch will be 00, and then the same thing would be true for the only watch, because it's the only watch. It'll be 00 as well, or maybe they'll have it as 01. We'll have 2 01s, one for the regular one we're making, and then one for the only watch. Okay, let's see what else you got. Hey, Vincent, why not accept more people into the group, like 150? Vincent, uh, there's several reasons. I think probably that one of the biggest is logistics. Um, I don't know. We can think about it, but basically, it's really hard. I mean, dealing here, we're juggling um close to $1 million right now. It'll be right around 800,000, $900,000 that we have to deal with in my bank account, or my company's bank account, which I'm not crazy about, but that's the way it is. Um, and they're working on it in Switzerland, trying to get something going for us. Um, so that's probably the reason. We started last time when we started our first watch. We were hoping that we could get 20 people. We ended up with 51, and then of those 51, a lot of people wanted multiple watches, and then we started getting people from who were making it. The people who were making a watch saw this watch and they said, "Oh man, I got to have one of those." So we ended up, I think, with the 70 were 65 were for the elite group, and 5 more they made for the guys who are the watchmakers, which is, I talked to our designer. He said this is, he's designed watches for a lot of other companies, so this is the only one that he's had for himself, and I thought that was sort of cool. Okay. So anyway, I don't know if I answered the question. Jesus Christ. About that, Vincent, but that's the answer right now. We're not remember, this is something else too. A lot of people want to treat us as like a regular corporation or something. We're not. We're a bunch of watch collectors, which sort of means we're a little nuts. We're doing it one project at a time, and so as an organization, we're sort of episodic, and so saying, well, we'll have more and more and more. It just sort of, I mean, we thought we were going to be dealing with 20, dealing with 51, and then 70 watches was no mean task, believe me. So, anyways, it's a perfectly legitimate question, but that's the answer. Okay, let's see. Hey, Artie. Um, Hi, Kinasaki. More people, more economic, but more complications. I think it's good to take a conservative measures in increasing. I think 100 is for the second project. Yeah, thanks, Kinasabi. That's exactly right. I mean, like I said, we're not we. I think it's to some extent I haven't been crazy about some of the economic models that a lot of the guys want because we're not a regular business. But but I I go not go along with it, but it's more like, okay, this is based on consensus. If this is what the consensus wants, then I'll do it. And I think that that's going to be an important as we go along. There's going to be things you do not like on this watch. As it turned out, I love it. But as we went along, they're saying, well, man, I didn't like this, I didn't like that, and how come we didn't do it this way? Well, we didn't. And as it turned out, I'm glad about it. But there are going to be things you don't like, and rolling on the floor and turning blue isn't going to work with this group. I can tell you that right now. It's not going to work with me. That's for sure. But we can discuss stuff, and we need to be polite to each other. I mean, you can't say, somebody comes up with something and says, "Oh, that's really a stupid idea." What will happen though, sometimes someone will come up with an idea or a comment, and somebody else says, well, we can't, well, we if we do that, we're going to have to change this and this and this and this. For example, I think I've used this example before. Someone said, well, why don't we have enamel dials? Well, enamel dials are really nice. The problem is that we paid a lot to have this designed. Our wonderful case with the teardrop belt around it. Love that the dial. So we're going to use the same case. And so if someone says, well, we want to do that, but I like the case too, but you have to go through the whole design process again because it's thicker. There are other kinds of problems with enamel too, but it's these kinds of things. I think it's important for us to listen to each other. I've come up with ideas and someone said, well, yeah, that's nice, and they're right. Okay. So it's important to really listen. Some people I've had to deal with that were like, it's explain it to them and they don't want to hear it. Don't do that with this group. That's not a good idea. I can tell you that right now. I mean, you sort of lose all credibility if you do that. If there's a good reason not to, and we've been through it already, listen. Hey, Bruce, I believe the perception watch has a hand pressed Guilloche, did the entire watch sells for $2,700? Might be a candidate to make a hand press dials at a reasonable price. Bruce, that's another thing. I think it's an important thing to bring up. We're not trying to make the cheapest watch or the most economical one. We're trying to make the best one, because remember, the economics of this watch and the savings that we have on this watch are totally in not paying for advertising and dealer discount and everything else. What that means is that we will go for the best on everything, even though it costs more. We're not. I mean, you see these watches, and I don't know what they call them, crowd-funded deals, and they come out, and there's something that doesn't look quite right. We don't cut corners, period. And I know economically that says, well, we can save some money here. It doesn't make a bit of sense, not when you're paying as much as we are for a top quality movement, a top quality case, and say, oh, well, we're going to save a few bucks on this. Please, man, we end up with you start doing that, and before you know it, you got something that doesn't look right. Yeah, Vincent, you're gonna be surprised a lot. Okay, these we we were. Um, Henry, following up from your last video, what happens to the watch being sent to GPHG? Does it get returned? Okay, great question, Henry. What we had decided on the first round, if your watch, I'm not sure whether it gets past nominations or it has to win. It goes into the GPHG museum if you want it to. Well, we decided that if we were invited to have our watch in the GPHG museum, we would do it. Okay. Now, last time I bought and paid for the watch. All right. And we didn't make it. We didn't go anywhere. And so I ended up with two watches. And a friend of mine saw it at the Watch Time show in New York, and he said, could I buy it from you, this extra one? And so I sold it to him for pretty much what I paid for it. Um, what a very good idea that Rancher had this time. If we get locked out again, what we're going to do with it is auction it off. And I thought that was a great idea. We'll auction it off, and then we'll just put the money into the Larique kitty. So that's what we're going to do with it. If it doesn't get, if it, we'll have our only. It's not going to be an only watch, but it'll be a lonely one. Gustav, not to mention the cost reduction of all the work. Yeah, this is something, Gustav. You're right. We save money by doing the work ourselves. Now, that's another thing too, and this is important, I think, for everybody. And this, we gotta have fun doing this. Two things: one, have fun and learn a lot. Uh, I have learned so much from the first round. I think we all did, and so that's the thing to do is learn to really enjoy the journey. Okay. Oh yeah, Bruce. Everybody, suggestions I think are important, but I think it's also remember we're getting a watch that we can't afford. We could not afford this watch because it has the same quality as a Gronfeld, or and the company Agenor was by started by Jean-Marc Viderec, who overlooked our movement, and he was the first person to win the Watchmaker of the Year. I mean, that's why if we have really high quality in one thing, we're going to have it in all areas, and it does cost more. But boy, it sure doesn't cost 10 times more than we would pay otherwise. And I think as sort of as a mindset, we need to keep that in mind. Now, this doesn't mean to be foolish. Believe me, if we find things that are two different prices for exactly the same thing, we'll go with a better price. We're not fools, but we're not, on the other hand, we're not looking for any kind of thing that's less in quality. Vincent, there's been an answer to that question. And this was one of the things that I think it's important to understand. Once you get an answer, that's, let's not beat a dead horse, okay? The horse is dead. All right. It's important to understand because we can't make any progress that way. You ask a good question, you got the answer, and that's the way it goes. I'm not gonna I'm not going to bring up that question because I've got to coordinate this whole thing. All right, and maybe the next time around or something like that. But believe me, like I said, this is not something that we're going to listen to somebody whine ad nauseum about. That's important to understand that. Okay. Okay. Comment on enjoyment is so true. I joined number one because the whole process is interesting. At the time, the watch wasn't really a type. Yeah, that's something else. We had no idea what Kirk is saying. We had no idea initially whether we could pull this thing off or not. That was one of the things the rancher asked us, "Do you think we can do it?" I said, "I have no idea." And so it's like what we did, we really, I think we learned from each other too. I sure did. And something would happen. We learned from the producers, all kinds of places to learn on that. Hey, James, not sure how I got here. Not sure if this is about watches, politics. The lingo isn't making sense. Why don't you leave then, James? Okay. Maybe you ought to leave. You don't know if it doesn't make sense. It was pretty well explained what we're going to do. Patel, Philippe, did you learn about the first time you entered GPHG versus what you'll do this time? Yeah, that's a good question. Um, what what we learned the first time was that we put in a watch that was way over the class of watches we were going up against, and this was something. It was sort of like putting a NFL player in a Pop Warner league. It just was way over the other ones in the competition. And so what we were seen as was that we were trying to buy a prize. And it so people were really mad at us because we had a watch that was punching way above its weight. We didn't know that. So what we learned this time, we talked to, in fact, it was Jean-Marc Viderec who said, okay, guys, this next time, I said, what category should we put it in? And he said, put it in the men's watch. So that's what we're going to do. There are other categories we could put it in. Some people might think, well, it goes into one that is, sort of fancy. What do they call it? I forgot what the name of it was. But it's sort of more of an artistic kind of thing because we have the Guy Lochet. Man, you ought to see the watches that go in that category. We wouldn't have a chance. But with men's watches, we might actually get to the nominations. I don't know whether we will or not, but at least we're not going to be seen as a bunch of guys who are trying to pull something that other people don't like. The other point is that you know we're going up against any kind of competition again, beyond the petite aiguille and the challenger categories. We're sort of up in the main event, so to speak. And will we get banged around? Who knows? Because we've got a great watch, we've got a really unique movement. You can see You're going to say, well, we're using the same movement again. And the answer is yes, we're using the same movement uh, because we got such a good one. But later on, we're going to be getting a new movement. You look at most watch companies, they will have one base movement and they'll use it on all of their watches. We'll be using the next watch that we've got planned, we'll be using it on that. The one after that, some ideas that I had about that, we're going to be very, very different. Okay. Yeah, Kirk, you're right. Kirk keeps reminding me, he tries his best to keep me honest about it. Yeah, we're dealing with the vendor's profit margin, so he's right on that. What we learned the first time was that GPHD labeled Bill's beret as a hate crime. Yeah, got rid of the beret. Um, I feel that the judges felt that we were lowballing the price. Exactly, Abdul. Yeah, and I think since then it turned out, much to my surprise, that there were a lot of people who are for us, who want to say, "What are you guys talking about? Look at these guys have done." And it was like there were too many people going the other direction. Yeah, Zaran, you're right. Absolutely right. Bruce, are you correct? Since we have 100 individuals, the cost is dispersed. Yeah, exactly, Bruce. How do we come up with the name Lurie? Good question, Bruce. I mean, Eugene. That's not a dumb question. This is how. The first one we had that I came up with was séduisant, and I thought it meant beguiling. Okay, I mean it does mean beguiling. I thought, well, we'll have a watch, and séduisant sounds cool. It's a French word meaning beguiling, but also means seducing, and so forth. And Nicholas Vitorek, who was sort of our main contact with Agenor, kept saying, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's a good one. So we did what we always did. We'll ask Matu. Matu is our designer. He came up with Larique. And then another one of our guys, Manuel, who he had come up with etude, which means practice. And so Larique uh, came sort of as a term that was nobody else had. By the way, too, Larique, we had it registered as a Swiss trademark for watches, and so it's like nobody else can use our name, at least in Switzerland. Goal is to be in the final six from the category. Yeah, pretty much that's it, Abdul. If we're in the final six, we might win it in some other the other categories, and some of the other categories are like for innovation and audacity and certain things that people who do something different, and we're certainly different. So we'll see. Men, yeah, the thing is, Patek hasn't won in a long time. Men, Uh, I think they had a problem once they started putting those their silicon hairsprings in. They have won some, but they sort of quit early on. Vacheron Constantin and Patek Philippe were winning everything. Um, Now another point, man, we don't have a watch company. You got to understand that they do. Gustav, um, yeah, I mean, we had so many people. We've got a standby list a mile long. If this is something you don't want to participate in, that's fine. Um, there was, I don't know, I guess there's the membership in Lurique is another issue, and that's something that we haven't really figured out yet. So See what you can do with that. Oh my God, Patel. Okay. AP has won the most GPHGs of all. You're right, they have. Audemars Piguet, they make really excellent watches. Their big problem, though, I mean, not a problem, but to me, it's they're everything. They have so many of their watches are simply a version of the Royal Oak. You know, they did so well with that. A lot of other ones they had, they sort of dropped by the wayside. Some of their newer ones might go beyond that, but they have just outstandingly good watches. But so do we. Okay. Um, Koji, you would be the guy to know that on music. What we had, I liked the tune we had last time. I was sort of thinking maybe that could be our theme song, but we're open to ideas, different ideas. Tudor enders every year with just a different dial color. You're right. Now see what they're this is on the one hand, it's considered bad for us to have a watch under 10,000 or under what is it 3,500 for challenge category. But Tudor, all they do is give a different paint job every year, and they win one of those categories or the sports categories. They sort of circle it around. They have what Tudor is really a sort of Rolex's presence. In 2007, Rolex entered two watches in the Grand Prix, and neither one of them got anywhere. I mean, they were like us. We share their sadness. They didn't even make nominations. No. Anyway, okay, one last one. For those of us not participating, will you post updates on YouTube to get an idea about progress, challenges, successes, and so forth? Ah, boy, we didn't do it last time. We sort of had an ongoing. We had a weekly meeting on sort of we had a weekly meeting with the progress as we went along and discussed different things. We'll be doing the same thing with sort of this subgroup that's it's on Sundays. Um, but in terms of a larger audience, I don't think so. But it might not be a bad idea. It really might not be. Maybe I missed the part, but Bill mentioned the watch will be by October this year. Okay, let me that I hope we'll have maybe the first one by October, okay? Uh the like I said, I think I don't know if you this registered or not. I just the other day I got a thing from Boot and Lannon and Caton saying, "Look, when you guys getting started, because it takes, I think, 4 to 5 months just to get uh, the sapphire dial, sapphire glass for the watch. Then there's all of these other production things. Something else too. I think that's another important thing. Ours is really assembled by hand. All of the parts and things are ordered by um, Agenor, and they've got to be assembled by hand, put together. Um, the the and then once all of the parts are together, they have to have it cased. And casing, I thought casing would be really, bip bip bip, you know, dial, case, and movement and hands, and Bob's your uncle. But apparently, ours had to be put together very carefully, and it's done beautifully. That's called the encasing, and that took them longer than they thought it would. So we'll see on that. The best thing to look at this is that these times, believe me, we do have expectations for them not to let things slide. Um, so, uh, yeah, Koji and hey, listen, Koji and Kirk, whatever music you guys want. Music is one of the things that, like I said, I don't know, where the music we had last time was, maybe we ought to have a different one for all of them. How do you imagine dealing with new parties list who can't get on for futures? Vincent, we have a standby list, and they're simply on the standby list. See, this is something else too. We're not trying to be exclusive, but that's what we end up doing. We've got a limited edition of 100. Patek Philippe makes 50,000 watches a year. Um, Rolex makes 1.5 million, at least according to my best source. So see, we're not in that. We're not trying to outproduce anyone. We just want to get some good watches that we can afford. And in terms of the the watch companies that we deal with, the watchmakers, it takes some time to do watches at this level. So yeah, Kirk, I imagine we'll do what we did last time. Even though we didn't have all the watches done, we got one watch out for the Grand Prix. We got one for the watch time show, and they were out way early. And basically, this requires certain kinds of scrambling around and getting everything put together by that. And we got the one in October by the skin of our teeth. But believe me, they'll be coming out in dribbles. Also, too, the Europeans are going to get theirs first this time instead of last. And so they'll get it before they have the Americans will get theirs about the same time. And this time, Asia and Australia and Canada will be sort of on the last group. So we rotated it that way. Okay, Richard, I'll take that one more. It looks like I'll have to content myself with Ophion Salmon Guilloche, which is, hey, Richard, I love Ophion. Ophion, they also use Voutilanen and Caton. Yeah, they're a great watch company. I really like them a lot. Anyhow, guys, listen, I know I usually keep this at a half an hour, but went over today because we had a lot of things going on. And so at 4 o'clock today, 4 o'clock New York time, and by the way, too, the United States is now on daylight time, whereas the rest of the world is still on standard time. So go by the um, GMT time. I post the GMT time, and that just wherever you are relative to the GMT time. So at 4 o'clock daylight Eastern time, we'll be having our next one. We can continue this conversation. Okay. Okay. Last question. How do I get on the waiting list? It's called a standby list. By the way, too, real quick, one last thing. What's the standby list for? The standby list is for this. If somebody drops out, I had a financial emergency and I can't, you know, I gotta drop out. We'll have somebody that will take over, and so we have people on the standby list for that. And we got people that can probably almost double what we have already, so we're in good shape. We'll see you guys. Take care. See you this afternoon or next week, perhaps.